Here we go. So my good friend Ashley McCole from over in Perth runs the Axial Integration meetup groups over there in Perth. So anybody who listens to this podcast, please hit Ashley up after this and head along to his meetups. I know he throws his heart and soul into these and really see some great results. So Ash, welcome to the show.
Great. Yeah, good to be here, Simon. And hello to all your listeners. Looking forward to having a great and meaningful chat with everyone.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And I think this is, you kind of came to me and said, hey, do you want to maybe talk about this on the podcast? And I thought, yeah, perfect. Because you're kind of thinking this time of year, Christmas, holidays,
yes, we all know what's coming up.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Everyone's getting back together with their family and for some people, this is a really beautiful, meaningful time of year. And that's certainly the case for me. I love getting together with my family. I'm very, very fortunate to have just a beautiful family who, we play games and, all sorts of fun things. But you wanted to talk about a different side of this time of year. This year is going to be a bit
different. Yeah. And I happen to think maybe we can't ignore this for all too much longer. So, I mean, Christmas has been cranking since 336 BC after the Nicene Creed, right? Like they made it a thing. They're going to how can we get, everyone's loving the Saturnalia, but how are we going to get them on board with Christmas, right? With Christianity. Yeah. We'll make Jesus a party, and it's been happening since then. Really, things took off in the sort of Civil War and Victorian kind of period. And but now, then we had a global pandemic, and there's been a lot of strain and stress and pressure that's come into the mix. And I think this is something that we're really going to have to address, right? I mean, the purpose of this podcast is living wisely. The unexamined life is not worth living.
That's what you think this podcast is about. I'm all about the folly, right? That's
right.
That's where I play most effectively. But go on.
Well, we're going to have to examine this situation, I think, because what would be wise or virtuous or courageous about just sticking our head in the sand? There's an elephant in the room right now, which is vaccines, right? And this is tearing families apart and societies apart. People are very, very polarized around this issue. And so how do we respond to this, right? Like, we are being asked to respond. If you think if we think providentially about this, that we've been matched with an opponent, that people like the world is in need of leadership, right? And the best way to start that is at the smallest level that we can, which is ourselves, our family, our friends, our community, the world. So let's focus on this level of the family, about how do we respond in these situations. So, and of course, the purpose of this podcast today is going to be to encourage you all to start this conversation, to start to get thinking about this, and put it on your radar, right? Like we kind of, a lot of us, myself included, we have sort of avoidant tendencies. A lot of. I mean, I'm especially when I've met Stoic people, that's they've had avoidant tendencies where they think, where like thinking their way out of things might be the answer to this, and so those really, families are very triggering. If you think that, have you heard the expression, if you think you're enlightened, spend a weekend with your family? Right? so all your virtue and sagehood and shit like that, it goes right out the window when you know, these people that you haven't seen in 6 months, right? You know, and they start asking, you, you know, when you're going to get a better job, you know, and you're like, oh, you know. So anyway, think of this more. What's that favorite quote of Seneca of yours about the hospital bed? Let's remind the audience today about that one.
Yeah. Well, you know, he kind of says, consider me as somebody in the hospital next to you, not as a sage telling you how to live, but, you know, somebody who's also sick and trying to get better and talking to you about how to get better. And if I can just clarify something with you. So, you know, what you're really talking about is we're living in this extremely polarized environment. There's, you know, even more than vaccines, there's a lot of things on the table at the moment that are polarizing for people in their lives. And this time of Christmas, when we get together with our families, you know, we spend that time, you know, although, you know, and I said to you before this, I want to bring a bit of a positive element into this, because I think that a lot of people, for a lot of people, this is a beautiful time of year. This is a time of deeply meaningful rebuilding connections with your family and
Yes.
you know, nourishing those relationships. But what you're talking about specifically is what happens when we live in an environment where things are so polarized, where so many people are so drawn apart by the certain issues that we're facing with at the moment. And I like what you say about we're faced with an opponent here, as in, well, we would have to define what that opponent is first. So you're wanting to talk about, you know, how do we wisely approach, you know, family gatherings when we know that we're living in a world and an age of polarization?
Yes. Well, let's come back to what's great about Christmas towards the end. I guess, I mean, I suppose it's not so much Christmas per se, but it's just that Christmas coming up, being a big family event, is really bringing this, it's creating a sense of urgency around this, which what I want to start the conversation to get people thinking about is embodying wisdom in your relationships. Because this doesn't just happen with family, it's, you know, co-workers, boss, whoever, you know, the people, mate down the road, whatever it is, where these things can just tear people apart and create these rips. And it's the most terrifying thing to deal with is our, you know, emotional traumas are the most terrifying thing to deal with, right? Like, you know, you can be the, you know, business top CEO, you know, hardest athlete there is around, but like emotional trauma is, I would, you know, it's 10 times more difficult, right? Like, and you know, there's reasons for that, right? It's like, if you're a little baby, you're going to die if your parents don't reciprocate that love. And if we haven't resolved those issues in our childhoods, it stays with us, and then that plays into our relationships, and you create these kind of dynamics, and then you know, trauma causes distortions in our thinking and perceptions, and if you want to live wisely, philosophically, you know, governed by truth and reason, but you've got all these kind of blind spots because distorted, you know, thinking and perceptions, right? Like, you're right, like the, you know, classic example, you know, like, you know, people get abandoned by their parent, and then they think everyone abandons me, you know, and then you reinforce it because unconsciously being abandoned is what feels normal, natural, and comfortable to you. So then unconsciously you start seeking out relationships where you know, people abandon or abuse or narcissists or whatever the case is, and it just warps your reality, and then you're not living truthfully anymore. And it's very, very difficult because, you know, despite all the evidence, you know, reason, right, like David Hume, right, reason is the slave of the passions. Yeah, I know that's controversial to say for all the stoic kind of audience, right? Because we love our rationality, we certainly do. But you know, like, I guess to me, that means follow the evidence. And, so what does neuroscience, Antonio Damasio, all these kinds of people have to say about that? So, yeah, for de-escalating situations, I mean, I'm sure we've all probably heard about someone who has a family that's been torn apart by the vaccine, like someone maybe gets a girlfriend, they kind of share a bond that they're into wellness and natural remedies and things like that. And then slowly they're on the internet and they kind of go down a rabbit hole. And then eventually, they decide, what, we're not gonna get a vaccine. And, maybe they have legitimate concerns, maybe they don't. But then, maybe there's an elderly member of the family, or someone's got an autoimmune disease or something like that, and they say, I can't take any risks. And then, it just gets that person, someone feels attacked, or the other person, and people are taking sides. There's a massive rift. I heard a story about the parents deciding not to get their child vaccinated. And then the auntie of this child said, I'll take care of the kids for the weekends. Don't worry, you have a weekend off. And then without their knowledge, went and got the child vaccinated, because she's like, this is my niece. I don't want her to die of polio or what, and something like that. And then, and then battle lines are drawn in the family, right? Who was wrong? Should we have respected her wishes? Shouldn't we have, and it gets very, very awkward. And this also happens for other things, right? Like
that doesn't seem confusing to me, who was in the wrong there. but we can talk about that another time.
Yeah. And family, I mean, it can also be, polarization of conservatives and social justice and all these sorts of things. There's any kind of polarizations that can happen in this kind of world that we're living in. So let's start a conversation and, talk to your friends, look up some articles, watch some videos, reflect on your past experiences, talk to your counselor or your therapist about it. If this is you, if you're in this situation, but we can all definitely improve our relational skills in any capacity. Even if you do have a happy, loving, warm household, right? We can all be a bit more honest and authentic around these people. And it's very difficult with family. I think most people will find, because people project a kind of role onto you. There's a kind of dynamic in a family, and sometimes when you outgrow that role, people still kind of see you in those terms, and so it can be very, difficult or strained to be authentic. So, the unexamined life is not worth living. So, I think we need to examine why see our family, right? And this isn't to encourage you to say, I'm out, screw you, I'm better than all you people, I don't need you. It's about coming from a place of authenticity, so that when you have examined why you're going to be in a situation where you're around people, where you might have disagreements, or there might be some tension or strain in the relationship, or you might feel like you're tiptoeing around and you're not completely heard. Examine why are you doing this, right? There's something that you're getting out of this. There's some value in being here, and let's acknowledge that, right? And you will need that acknowledgement, right? When the tough times come, that acknowledgement is going to be a lifesaver, right? Because then it's gratitude, right? You can say, well, they did kind of birth me, these people. That's pretty cool, right? Despite all our difficulties, I can be grateful that these are the people that brought me into this world. These are the people that raised me. Yeah, it's not fun pushing somebody out of your vagina, okay? So it's not fun waking up at 1 a.m. and then waking up at 3 a.m. and then waking up at 5 a.m. right? Simon's nodding at me now, right? I'm just, maybe in a few years he'll be going down this path, and you'll be, you'll be finding out, right? Your parents, they made a big sacrifice and commitment to you. As you know, I love my chickens, but if you told me I had to carry a massive rock in my ass for 9 months to have another pet chicken, I just don't know if I'm prepared for that level of sacrifice. But your parents did that for you. And so that, like, wow, let's acknowledge that and be grateful. They brought you into this world. And, they may not have done the best that they could, or any other people in your family may have been somewhat misguided in some of their choices, but what are you going to do? What are you going to say? You're going to say, Mum, Dad, Grandma, Auntie Karen, whoever, you weren't there for me when I needed you, right? So because I didn't get to go to college, it just would have been better if I never existed. I'm out. I hate this. I'm going to stew in my bitter resentment. You know what I mean? Like that's not wise, right? Have some some gratitude, have some compassion. Everybody's trying to do the best with what they know and what resources they have. And if you assume that attitude, and this is the attitude of Socrates in the Apology, that, as well as many other places that you'll find in Plato, that the soul is deprived of truth against its will. So we can have a bit of this is something that people, I think, really miss. Even Jordan Peterson misses this, right? Is that whoever it is, if they I mean, we should always assume that people know something we don't, but if someone really is earnestly wrong, it's to their detriment. And so why don't we have compassion for them? Like, I don't want to kind of sound biased, right? But a lot of anti-vax people that I know are in a kind of cult of paranoia, where they believe that, the world is on the verge of a satanic takeover or something like that, right? I know one lady who thinks that the vaccine is laying the groundwork for Satan to launch his apocalypse. And that's not a happy place to be in, so let's have compassion for that.
But is that the goal, to be in a happy place? There's one for you, right? I'll just sneak in. I'll sneak in now. Listen, I'm all on board with you that, I think that either direction in this whole vaccine debate, you can be taken down really uncritical and unhelpful, rabbit holes, and you can just keep on going deeper into it. And I'll describe it like this. Like
sorry about that, by the way.
No.
I promise I won't push any more lizard.
No.
Onto you, okay?
Well, I just find it interesting that, I spoke to somebody who I know recently, who I've worked with a few times before. And this person, is definitely not interested in getting vaccinated. And I'm fine with that. I think that there are absolutely perfectly good reasons why a person would not want to be vaccinated, especially in this current world that we live in. I'm vaccinated. I don't need to say that, right? And there's no reason to say that other than to say that, like, I'm not trying to push a particular view right here, right? But this person, when I started talking to him, I started to notice that, no matter which conspiratorial direction you go down, you end up becoming an ideologically driven conspiracy thinker, meaning I can now guess exactly what words you're going to use, and you're going to use those words, and I know it, right? You'll mention the Rothschilds, and it'll mention, like global banking and, vaccines, and it'll mention Trump, and, like China. China, all of these things start coming out. And so it's like all of these conspiracies are somehow linked, and no matter which direction you go, they all lead to the big pool where you just start rambling on these words that everybody's just using. But can I get like laser focused here and give you an example, right? And ask you. So let's say let's say, Ashley, you go back to your, to your family gathering actually, I want to make one comment. If it's been 6 months since you've talked to your family, or, been around your family or something like that, that's probably the first issue that I would fix with people is to say,
interesting.
Perhaps it might actually be good to not wait until the last minute before Christmas to be thinking about how you interact with your family, but to think of it as a whole. How is my relationship with my family? I don't believe that everybody needs to be perfectly happy with their family at all times, but I think that it's good to, you've only got one family, so you might as well nourish what you can, nourish that garden. Anyway, so let's say, Ashley, you go back to your family, you know that your Uncle Joey's there, and he's going to start, I don't know, talking about the lizard people who are, on their way to take over Perth, which if you've seen the premiere of Perth, that guy is definitely a lizard person. Anyway, sorry, no. Okay.
What? That's controversial.
I know it's controversial. Anyway.
He's more like, if you live in WA, he's the second coming of Jesus.
That's so wild to me. Anyway, look, we're going to get into this right now. We're going to have one of those arguments. We're going to have to nourish our relationship. But let's say you go and
for all you listeners, Simon's just upset because our premiere won't let him in.
Yeah, that's one of the major reasons that I'm upset with him. But let's say you go to your family, and Uncle Joey starts spurting out a whole bunch of his highly opinionated, controversial views that maybe you definitely disagree with. How do you deal with a situation like that?
How do you deal with the situation? Yes. Well, there's so much. I mean, we're sort of, every family is different. Every person, every relationship is different. Has a different dynamic, a different history, different personalities. So I would say the first thing is accept Joey. I don't know if Joey's an uncle name. I think more of like a stoner cousin kind of name for Joey, right?
Okay. Let's say
maybe
it's a stoner
like
cousin.
Gary. All right, the stoner cousin, right? So I think you say acceptance, right? So first of all, that's the way that Joey is. Okay, he had too much THC. It was one bong too many, and
well, don't rely on that, right? don't rely on the weed part of things.
I mean, like so let's assume that he's got some kind of schizoid personality spectrum, towards the higher end, and it's bordering on a kind of mental illness or something like that, right?
No, but so that's way too easy of an example, right? Because in that case, of course, you're going to give him more compassion in your response to him, because it's like, but if it's just your Uncle Bob, and he starts splitting out, and there's nothing, intellectually impediment to no intellectual impediment to him, then you really start to have to think, okay, this is complicated now.
But I mean, the same principles apply, right? It's acceptance, right? Bobby is the way that he is. He has his own beliefs. For whatever reasons, whatever experiences have led him to these conclusions, I can't control that, right? Me yelling at him, getting angry and heated and telling him he's wrong and flooding his inbox with all these articles or evidence or whatever it is, he's not going to change, right? So you've got to accept that, and it's not personal, right? If he thinks that all people who don't believe in this are stupid, or all people who do believe in that are evil, or something like that, it's not personal, right? If he's being misguided, then let's have a bit of compassion. Or he might be right. There might really be shape-shifting reptilian pedophile Chinese overlords in the form of Hillary Clinton, or however it goes. He might be right. That
was a perfect sentence right there that pulls together all those conspiracies. That was amazing. It was high quality. Yeah.
Yep. And I doubt it. It's not reasonable. And if that's true, then there's nothing I can do about that either. What can I do about this, right? What could I do to improve this relationship? So empathizing with people's concerns, if you don't validate or if you invalidate people, it's going to escalate very quickly. If someone feels like they're not heard, they're not acknowledged, they're not valued, it'll isolate them, and isolation tends to lead to that path of radicalization. And getting angry, making a scene, it's not going to work, right? You're just adding fuel to the fire. And that means this is where the leadership comes on, right? Because it means that it's on us to exercise our virtue of temperance, or maybe humility,
massive humility,
cool those impulses, and to take that step back. You can practice some of your Stoic techniques for that, whichever you might want to use, taking the kind of view from above to watch these, the transience and impermanence of all these feelings, and realize I am not this thought feeling that I have towards the desire to strangle Uncle Joey's neck. That's not me. That's not reasonable, rational. I don't have to listen to this. I can just let that go on and pass, and I can re-put my focus back onto the gratitude of how wonderful it is that we're all just alive on this beautiful day with some delicious, delicious food. So don't make assumptions. This is something I'm really much have a problem with, is otherizing and tribalizing. Okay. And it might sound like I'm ragging on the anti-vaxxers here, but well, I got to call out the pro-vaxxer people here for otherizing and tribalizing against these people, which just, as I say before, escalates and elevates the situation. So, using language like do the right thing, I've never met a anti-vaxxer who woke up in the morning and said, I want to be evil and a harmful, hurtful person today, so I've decided not to get vaccinated. If only somebody yelled and humiliated at me a bit more, then I would change my mind. There's reasons why people don't do it. If we can understand those reasons, then they're not. How is someone going to listen to you if you don't listen to them first? It's just not going to happen, right? So no righteous superiority. Get rid of your righteous superiority. Righteous superiority, it feels good and it's seductive, right? And it's not virtuous to let that, to get sucked into that. It's a passion, right?
Yeah.
It is.
I'm sorry, Ash,
you get addicted to it.
I'm going to have to employ a little bit of righteous superiority right now.
Oh, yeah?
Because I feel a rant coming on, because you said something so important for this time. And I've been thinking about this lately. I think that one of the most foolish trends that I'm seeing in media reports at the moment, and publicity stunts from the politicians, is using that statement, do the right thing. Right. And they're using this phrase in relation to every single new law that they're putting in place around this COVID situation. Yeah. And every time I hear that, what I'm thinking is, what the hell is your idea of what the right thing to do is? Is your idea of the right thing to do simply to follow the law? Because that is not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is a complicated, deep, it's so complex to think about what is actually the right thing to do. So, for example, and I'll tell people this because it's an example of the way that I'm thinking about this. My wife and I, during one of the lockdowns here in Queensland, we decided we're going to go and have a picnic on the beach, because there is literally no safer place to be than away from people on a beach in the sun, salty air, having some food, not stressed, with your wife during a lockdown, right? So it's like, we're going to do that. Within 5 minutes of us being there, the police came along and they moved us along.
Oh, naughty boy.
And I said to them, are you serious? Is there anything wrong with this? Right. So Jen was reasonably not wanting me to get into an argument with the police. That's great, right? That's fine. I respect her not wanting me to do that. But we packed up, we went to a spot that we knew that they weren't going to go. Because the right thing is not always to be following the law, because sometimes the law is stupid. And so I don't know, I just had to go off on a rant there, because like, I think that is one of the most surefire signs that our politicians have a crumbling moral framework when all they're saying is do the right thing in relation to these laws.
Yeah, I'm sure if Kai Whiting was here, he'd have some stories about the Stoic opposition, you know, and like Nero and Pharasius and all these sorts of people, right?
Yeah.
So you know, that's true. That's I mean, that's a whole nother.
It's a whole nother discussion. I just had to go on a rant.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope to yeah.
And yeah, I'm not necessarily saying that what I did was right when we went down to, you know, I'm not necessarily saying that. What I'm saying is, I think that it's very important that people do not listen to that advice that the right thing to do is always to follow the law, because that's just not, it's poor ethics, I would say.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why we need to be clear on what our ethics are.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why we need to live wisely, perhaps in a philosophical framework of some kind.
Yeah.
Or however, you know, whatever kind of means to value clarification that comes to you. But, you know, like, you might as well just assume the Stoic cardinal virtues. You should have been in WA, man. We got 1 hour during lockdown. We were allowed 1 hour for exercise within a 5-kilometer radius of our house. So it was great. I was in the hills and hiking in the national park and stuff like that.
But I don't know if I would describe that as great. I think better would be you're allowed to exercise outside in the sun as much as you want, but we'll move on.
yeah. I digress. All right.
I feel like we should just turn this into a giant rant about Australian politics during the COVID situation, and just do the opposite to what we were hoping to do. Just get completely polarized between us right here. But yeah.
But anyway, all right. So
back to the family. Yeah.
What I'll say about that then is, you know, we're not having a go at anyone, right? Even though I just did, I said this is the problem that I see people doing, but we need to have conversations about this from a place of good faith, where we're here to learn from each other and just not to tribalize. So it's perfectly fine if you don't agree with that. There might be some listeners to say, Simon, how could you have a picnic during lockdown? That's it. I'm out of this podcast, you know.
Yeah.
Never again, Simon, you've betrayed me. Yeah, I thought you were one of us or something like that. But
I've had similar emails to that. Yeah, and that's fine.
Wow.
But not
we can have
exactly
a conversation
like
about
that,
this.
Yeah.
Because this, as I say before, we are being presented with a challenge that we need to step up to. And it's possible that you are completely wrong about your evil picnic ways, and need to be taught a lot, you know. So let's have whatever it is, let's have a conversation from a good place, a place of good faith, where you're saying, you know, don't assume any kind of negative intent, you know, and say, Simon, tell me more about your decision to have a picnic. I don't understand that. And you can the kind of way that you talk, relating from yourself. You can start a conversation, like, and express empathy by saying something like, it's understandable that you might want to have a picnic during lockdown, right? Yeah. And so that's going to disarm you, right? I know you're not a tribalized person, but it's going to disarm you from thinking, oh, this is a genuine conversation. This person isn't hostile and making attacks.
Yeah.
You know, we're just going to have a conversation, and that could challenge my thinking. Right. So you know, and you could say this about vaccines. You could say, I think it's understandable that you would have questions about vaccines. Perhaps there are some legitimate concerns, and there's lots of conflicting information out there. What have you heard? You know, that could be a way to start conversation, right? Or, you know, you can say, you know, like I like to say why I got the vaccine. I don't say why everybody should get the vaccine. I say, you know, and then people can go, oh yeah, fair enough. Like, you know, so I'll say something like, you know, acknowledge their concerns, and you say, well, yeah, I guess they don't have, you know, 50-year long-term trials on the effects of vaccines compared to a control group that didn't get a vaccine. I guess they didn't. So, hey, mate, yeah, maybe there are some genuine concerns about the long-term effects of vaccines that we won't really actually be able to understand because there's so many variables. You know, from it, you know, I mean, that's, you know, speak the scientific language, right? That's, you know,
I think, can I just like interject here? Because I think that one of the things you're talking about is, you know, like a lot of people who have these extremely passionate views on either side. And I know I've been an example of that in today's episode. I'm fine with, listen, I'm fine.
All the listeners, we love you. And
yeah.
Please stay.
No, but what I'm trying to say is, you know, I think one of the things that we need to say is just don't become the person who you perhaps believe is acting against better wisdom. You know, don't become the person who pushes back in such a big way. Oh, you shouldn't, you know. And I want to emphasize this as well. There's like a really fine line between kind of compassion, empathy, and pity, right? And it's so easy to tip over into that place where it's not that you actually have compassion for the other person. It's not that you actually have empathy for the other person and their experience and their worldview. It's actually that you disdain their worldview, and now you pity them because how could they possibly be a person who could think that? And I think that is one of the most dangerous things that people can do, is when they get into that place where they, you know, they so are engrossed in what they think that they pity anybody who doesn't think what they think. And that, you know, there's nothing worse there's a lot of things worse, but there are a few things worse you could do to a person than pity them, you know, like that's such a sad thing to do to a person. So,
and this is why it's a challenge that we have to step up to. It is part of human nature, right? Like, just look at a chimpanzee, right? They're 98.5% human DNA. Look at the way they tribalize. They will rip each other to shreds without a moment of thought. Like, they don't, and they can't, chimpanzees don't have mercy, right? Like, once they go to war against the other tribe, they will just rip them to shreds, even if it's fellow chimpanzees that used to be part of their troop, but then moved when the troop got too big. So, you know, if the vaccine conversation comes up for me, all I have to say is like, perhaps there are legitimate concerns. I can understand why you feel that way, but it appears to me that, you know, although we don't know what these potential long-term consequences may be, it seems to me that we do know that COVID can be very devastating. And in particular, the decline in cognition is one of my biggest concerns. And I really value my cognition. I like having a good brain that, you know, so we can talk about philosophy, because that's my favorite thing. And so I've made the choice that I think the benefits outweigh the risks. And, you know, and it's not going to, like, I mean, it works so far. It's worked for me. It's not attacking anyone. It's not saying, oh, I'm responsible, you know, do the right thing. And so, yes, making people feel like they have a choice is also really important, right? And I think, and it's going to help you as well with setting boundaries. Setting boundaries, right? That's a can of worms. So, you know, it's
before
like,
you dive, can I just add one thing to just before you dive into that? I have to say, you brought up this important point that, you know, chimpanzees, they'll just rip into each other like quick, you know.
Yeah.
I think that it's important to look at animals, how they behave, look at humans, how they behave. And there's this idea that's brought to us through ancient philosophy, you know, particularly in Stoicism as well, and Christianity, that we are divine creatures, meaning we have that spark of divinity in us that actually separates us from the animals in a certain sense, right? We are still an animal species, but nonetheless, there's something different about us, which is that we don't have to act like animals. You know, we don't have to act like the chimpanzees. And every time we go against our better reason, every time we go against wisdom, we're sliding down that slippery slope into animal behavior, where it is like somebody says something that you disagree with and you immediately fly off the handle. And I just think that it's important for people to, just recognize that I actually think that's really helpful to think about. You know, I don't want to be like an animal. I don't want to be that. I want to bring out the best part of me, that spark of divinity that connects me to the logos of the whole, that allows me to look at the situation reasonably and defer the better judgment, you know? So it's,
yes, I have a
push
different
back.
perspective on that.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So you might see I've got a picture of Diogenes here on the wall. I mean, we are animals.
Diogenes the dog. There you go.
Yeah, we are animals, right? Like,
well, that's a theological argument then. What we're going to have to get into is a theological argument over whether or not we are, like I said, technically we are the species. You know, like we are part of the animal kingdom, right? I'm not saying we're not animals. I'm saying there's something that separates us from the animals, right? That we're still within there, but in that hierarchy of, you know, say mosquito up to like human being, we're not a mosquito. Do you know what I mean?
No. I mean,
that's one of the most hurtful things I've ever heard. Do you know what I mean? No. I get it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good example, right? No, fair enough, right? You're saying, okay, that's very dismissive and unempathetic. And what I should have said is, I hear what you're saying, Simon. It sounds to me like
we don't have to turn this into a therapy session. I'm not
talking about therapy.
Yeah.
I'm talking about
I mean like
rehearsing the kind of communication skills that are going to be able to allow us to embody more wisdom in our relationships, right?
Yeah.
You know, by, you know, all these things we've been talking about, acknowledging and validating people's feelings, validating them, you know, so it's these sorts of things, right? If you know, if auntie, if, you know, whatever it is, and you say, hey grandma, when you left me alone at that priest school, I felt like maybe you could have made a better decision. And then someone just says, or whoever it is, they say, no, very dismissive, right? That's actually hurtful. You know what I mean? Like if you had spent your whole career going down that line of reasoning, like learning, researching, studying, and you're like, this is what I believe in, this is what I'm passionate about, and then I just say, no, you know what I mean? Right? You're like, well, that's not cool. You know what I mean? So you're right. I mean, I could have handled this better, right? And this is the sort of thing that we are going to have to practice if we want. Yeah, but anyway, let's save that for another conversation.
Yeah, let's save that for another conversation. I'm looking forward to that.
I've done a bit of research on other hominid species, and it just happens that Homo sapiens are the only present living ones. But this, you know, this is why, like, where do you draw that line? You know, we have so much in common with other hominid species. Are they divine theological creatures that are separated from all the other animals? Right.
Well, we have so much in common, certainly, but we also share much of our DNA with trees, but we're not trees. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, but the other hominid species, there are evidence of spiritual practices like sacrificial burials. Neanderthals have done some cave art painting, you know, and so I think this human exceptionalism thing is a kind of hubris.
Well, you can definitely mark me down for having that hubris, but I think we should save this conversation for another day.
Yeah, definitely.
I think, yeah, definitely.
Definitely. All right. So where did I get to? You're gonna need good boundaries and allow people the choice. Okay. So, you can, instead of screaming at somebody, shut up, I don't want to hear it anymore, or something like that, right? If you say, Gary, do you remember when we had this conversation last year and we all decided that it was better if we just talk about something else? Yes. And you say, would you like to honor that commitment that we made, or would you like us to all get angry and have a screaming match again this year? Right? You know what I mean? Or, yeah, you see, that's probably a bad example. I mean, what the purpose of this is to make someone feel as if they've got some kind of a power, right? That they're not being kind of denigrated in a way that's going to elevate and trigger them and bring up all this past stuff and make and then what we haven't talked about so far is like the parasympathetic nervous system response, parasympathetic nervous system versus regular sympathetic nervous system, right? Where people, when you feel attacked, and you get into that fight or flight, and then you become defensive, and the blood's flowing away into your organs and your limbs, and you kind of shut down and close down, and there's no reasonable discussion can't take place in that kind of thing, right? And this is something we've got to keep on. Not if you're having an argument, or a conversation or a debate about whatever it is, but just even when you're, drawing these boundaries about, hi, hey, Gary, when you say this, it makes me feel disrespected. Could you please not say that? If you're elevated or irritated, agitated, whatever, that you might, are you accusing me? Are you attacking me? You're always trying to make me feel guilty. Whereas in that other state, you're more open and receptive. So, you can, step back, take a step back and say, oh, sorry, I didn't realize this kind of a thing, right? So as much as you can, there's no point just getting people angry and upset. And that doesn't mean avoid confrontation, avoid challenging or difficult conversations that really need to happen. But it's going about it in a wise way. They don't have to be violent screaming matches. And so these are skills that we're all going to have to learn, right? Be able to take a deep breath, go, if you need to go for a walk, go for a walk. Just things to get people on board with thinking about it before they approach these situations, right? Do we do the premeditation, negative visualization? What's going to happen when these conversations come up? Okay, yes, it's very likely ahead of time I will become agitated and elevated and have aggressive tendencies. So you can, how am I going to deal with this ahead of time? What can I remember? All right, let's memorize. What about? I might memorize verse 23, book 8 of Marcus Aurelius, when he says, "In what I do, I am to do it with reference to the service of mankind. In what befalls me, I am to accept it with reference to the gods." Something like that. Find something that resonates with you. Or 6.38, he says, "Think often of the bond that unites all things in the universe and their dependence on each other." And then you think, oh yeah, us humans, we exist for each other. So it's okay if if we have little differences here and there, because we're all ultimately here for the benefit of all mankind, or humankind and animal kind, chimpanzee kind, however you want to describe it. But getting these boundaries in place is going to be really vital for you to do that, because when people cross those boundaries that you have, you're going to be the one who's going to be, okay, I mean, I'm not prophesizing, right? But it's going to make you, it can make you feel angry and resentful and aggressive and invalidated and all the things that interfere with us, you know, embodying these virtues that we want to bring in our relationships, right? Because, you know, our mind gets taken over by, you know, your wound, you know, you get wounds triggered and they just, it's passion, right? They take over you.
Yeah.
So yeah, these are the sort of,
sorry, it almost seems like there's a formula necessary here. And because based on what we've talked about so far, I think you could reasonably say that when you're in a family situation where somebody is, you know, spouting out their, you know, hardcore beliefs about a certain thing, perhaps perhaps you need the humility to know that you might be wrong, the courage to speak what you believe to be the truth, and the wisdom to know when you need to change your opinion or when you need to perhaps speak some more about the thing that you believe to be true. You know, like if you can bring those things together, you know, because I personally, like, you know, if I go onto a website and I see it's this therapy website and it's like, okay, when you've got a tough situation with your family, here's what you should say. Oh, you know, you hurt my feelings and I wish you wouldn't say that. Or, you know, or the way that you said that didn't, you know, it's like life never goes that way where you end up having these therapeutic sentences with or conversations with you. Do you know what I mean?
Like in the movies.
Yeah.
In the movies, and then
you know,
they come
Jack,
out and say,
I wish you had have said that a
sorry.
different way, because, you know, it never happened. But I've always found that a little bit of humor helps. You know, a little bit of fun helps the situation. Joke with them. You don't have to, you know, put you're wrong, you know, but you could just joke. Yeah, I don't know about any of that. You know, like it's, you know, like diffuse the situation. Remember what's important about the situation, which is that we're coming together, family. This is supposed to be Christmas, meaningful engagement with your family, beautiful times. You can suggest to somebody, hey, I don't know if that's the right time, you know, to talk about this sort of stuff. You know, you can do that, but it doesn't have to. Yeah, think about just these core virtues that we can employ, and then the situation will present itself, and you will present yourself in the most natural way possible, right? That is going to work around you and your family. See, I don't know, and I think let me say one more quick thing here, because I'm going to drop a truth bomb here. This is okay. This is, yeah. Get ready. No, it's no, but
get ready for your hard to swallow pill.
Well, that's so egotistical of me to say, but the thing is, so we're living in a time of tribalism, as we've discussed. Everybody's picking their teams with these certain issues. So here's what I want people to do, right? Seneca said, wisdom and folly are taking separate sides. Which will I choose? Why don't you decide that the most important team that you could be on is that of wisdom over folly, right? Now that is the team that you want to be on. When it comes to vaccines, right? You can have your opinions and all that sort of stuff. I think it's completely foolish to say we all just need to go off the science. We all need to go off the facts. It's like, how much science has been done on this? So much. How many facts are there out there that we can research? And you know, it's like what Bill Burr said. He says people just go to imright.com and then they just blurt out a whole bunch of facts that they found. Because the thing is, like, there's too many facts to actually get. There's too much information out there for us to actually have a purely truthful, factual conversation. Have some humility. But when it comes to wisdom, we can all listen closer. We can all pay more attention. We can all choose in this moment to be driven by deeper wisdom. And of course, it's it's like, you can go down a path of folly when you're trying to follow wisdom. I've done that many times in my life. But if we can learn to develop our sense for what might be wisdom, what might be the most appropriate action in this particular situation, that's a way better place to be thinking than, oh, I'm definitely right about this, vaccine, or I'm definitely right about this thing. It's going to put you in the right frame of mind where you're actually looking at all times for the right kind of information that's going to be enabling you to act appropriately. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Well, I mean, there's a reason why people feel so passionately about whatever issue it is, right? For example, here in WA a few years ago, they had this like shark killing thing where they put up like a few people were getting attacked at the beach by sharks, and so old mate Colin, the premier, was like, "Oh, well, we'll just kill the sharks." And people got so angry. Like, that was a huge thing, right? She really brought people's passions out, this argument about, hey, should we kill the sharks, or should we just maybe put some nets up and like, be a bit more careful going to the beach, or, whatever it is. And you think, how is it that people feel so passionately about, saving a few sharks getting killed, and then, going down to Coles Coles is the supermarket, and then getting, a hot chicken or some rump steak. It seemed very illogical to me to, if you're concerned about animals so much, to really hone in on this shark issue. And what a great part of it is that people are hungry for a cause. We all need meaning in our lives, and a lot of it's being lost because the world is getting so complex and complicated and unfathomable, and we can't really make sense of it. And like, why go to work when a robot can just do it for us? And we don't, and relationships are degrading. Like, there's genuine reasons why it's becoming more and more difficult for people to find meaning and purpose in their lives. And so, like, a cause, right? And sometimes these causes can get cultic, right? They serve a function, and I think let's acknowledge that, why this is happening. Yeah, like human nature, it might have its, maybe there's some room for improvement there, but let's contemplate how many millions of years of evolution it took to bring us to this point. So our human nature, it's pretty good, and this need for meaning and purpose, and our tribalization kind of instincts, they've led us to here, and let's be grateful. And so I think let's just be conscious of picking some really good causes, right? And so this is why my man Marcus, right? I'm a big fan. And the oikeiosis meditations, where why don't we tribalize around humanity? Isn't that the point? It's expanding your circles of concern with the oikeiosis kind of meditation. And so it's, because we used to have civility, right? We'd make distinctions between one nation or one ethnic group. This is us. Over here is Wales and Scotland, and we'll invade them soon, as soon as we get the French off our back, right? Or whatever the case is. But it's not like right now that's broken down, and you can be on, pre-pandemic, you can be anywhere in the world, all corners of the globe and whatever. And all the evidence, we all know that, like, the universal humanity is the one thing that we all share, and we all share this beautiful earth. So if we can take that on board with the oikeiosis meditation, such as Marcus Aurelius' meditations will be able to guide us to do, that seems to me like a stoic approach to this, because we've all got our sacred cows that trigger us, right? And perhaps I'm getting the impression perhaps yours is that human exceptionalism or something like that, right?
It doesn't necessarily trigger me, it just reveals, a certain person's, foundational beliefs about what humans are, and perhaps what their purpose is, and that sort of stuff. And yeah, that's all.
I know, like there's people that come to the meetups I run that are like very shout out to Doug, I'm thinking of you right now, that they're very, the free will is very sacred, and they're, so that, I mean, that's just one example, right? It's probably a better thing. Free will versus determinism is probably a better thing to tribalize around than other things, right? Because at least there's, but if it causes the same kind of detriment and damage into people's lives and relationships, then it needs to be addressed, whatever that is. And it's very, very difficult to do. We got to acknowledge good intentions. We also got to acknowledge that we might love these people, or if we don't, well, they're part of human nature, and we're all here for the service of each other, just as Marcus Aurelius will inspire us to believe. And so if we don't love them, then we don't love ourselves, because we share the same nature of the divine spark of logos within them. So that's something to take on board, to think, oh, if I don't love my enemies as myself, I'm in defiance of the logos. So that's gonna take a bit of a challenge, a bit of work, or some growing or stepping up to kind of be able to embody. I'm speaking of it theoretically, that's very easy to do, but do I embody that every day? Well, that's why I need good buddies like you to challenge me and call me out on that sort of thing. Nobody's perfect, and so we should all be here to help each other learn and grow. And some people don't want to do that. That's their choice. There's nothing we can do about that. That's outside of our control. Is it book 1 or maybe book 2 of Xenophon's Memorabilia? He says that Socrates taught more through his example than through his. I wish I had pulled this quote out in advance now.
I see where you're going there.
Yeah. And so just if you can be loving and kind to these people, then that's probably that's in your control to do that, and that's probably the best thing you can do to help them learn and grow. No one is in a permanently fixed state. A lot of people, this is kind of I think a mechanism of tribalization, that well, these people are stupid and they're a problem, or something like that. Nobody's fixed. We're all learning and growing, and so we should treat people in that way, right? And well, actually, I'm thinking of right here, Carl Rogers. There's the 10 principles of helping relationships, and that's the 10th one. Is always respect that people are in a state of becoming rather than a state of being, which is the way that he describes it. So everyone's going to become something, and I suppose what Marcus Aurelius is, that what you're in a state of becoming is ashes or a rotting carcass or something like that, right? Well, if we look at it from that perspective, that, well, who cares, right? If all they are is just a corpse dug in the ground, well, who cares what they believe? You know what I mean? But so, some different Stoic approaches.
Another conversation we'll have to have in another day.
but I mean,
I just want to quickly point out something here. I think that when people hear, you should show a lot of love to people, and that should be this guiding spirit. I think Alan Watts does some really interesting lectures about this did some interesting lectures about this sort of thing, and talking about how you can't just tell people to go and love, because it's like, as soon as you're trying to love, it's like, that's not love, you don't actually feel it. But then I heard recently, I can't remember who I was listening to, it was very interesting. They were discussing this idea that, it's kind of like, Jordan Peterson actually has a definition of love. It's I'm going to get this wrong, but it's something like the best in me serving the best in you, and so there's an element of love that is action based, that even though you might not necessarily feel it right now, if you act out of the spirit of love, if you act towards somebody with dedication and service and care and nourishing, I heard this thing a while ago, and this really helped me with my relationships, was be dedicated and you will feel dedicated. Be dedicated towards somebody and eventually the feeling will catch up. And that really helped me to turn around and say, you know what, sometimes I'm not going to feel love. Sometimes I'm not going to feel these beautiful emotions that we want to feel in all of our relationships. But you can turn that around by choosing to employ that spirit of love in your life through your actions and through your service and through your care for another person. And I think that's like, good news, because if we couldn't do that, then we'd just be relying on, this fleeting feeling of love that, sometimes comes up and sometimes doesn't. But we can actually take that next step and try and move towards something better. So I think if anything people take away from this, I hope that they take away love. Like, it's so important this time of year in whatever way you can show it to people.
And I think that's what Christmas, I mean, if the unexamined life is not worth living, so let's examine Christmas. What is Christmas really about? Not everybody is a Christian, and even some Christians don't see Christmas as about Jesus anyway, for reasons that I think are quite legitimate. But anyway,
the tradition falls away. People forget new ways of seeing the world come in, and the tradition falls away, and then it's our job to revitalize the best of that tradition when we know we've fallen away. And that, I think that's what you're getting to right now. Go on.
But let's go with it, right? Let's assume Jesus really was born on the winter solstice, just like all the other gods were, or whatever.
Well, I don't think we have to assume that. There's a difference between the factual historical life and the tradition. The tradition reserves the meaning, and it keeps us in touch with the spirit of that kind of person. Do you know what I mean? So
spirit. That's spirit, right? If there's a spirit to Christmas, and I think what it's supposed to be about is it reminds us, it's a time for giving. And so, what I would suppose is that whatever your feelings are towards Christmas, whatever it means to you, we can use this as an opportunity to be conscious of, or it will bring to bear the importance of giving and generosity. That's something that we can think about. And some people say, well, but we should be kind all the time, no matter what kind of year it is. And you think, well, yes, that's true, but this time of year really helps to show that, right? When we celebrate it and make it a communal thing, everyone's doing it together. That helps you to take it into the rest of your year and rest of your life, and that's what it's supposed to be about. That's what gift giving is supposed to be about, not before the kind of consumerism, took over there. That's what's it's supposed to be about, the joy that when you give to somebody. Wow, I always wanted a fire engine with flashing lights, Wow, I always wanted a Lynx shower gel set for especially 4 of them, and some almond chocolates. Wow, how'd you know, Auntie? That's really what I wanted, right? I mean, but we've lost track of that, and so it's just for a lot of people, it's a chore and it's stressful, and they don't like it and they dread it. And why are we doing this? So let's examine this wisely and philosophically, and then take that burden of responsibility to say, what's in my control to make this festive season more joyful with a spirit of generosity? What can I do about that?
Yeah.
And what would happen? This is what would happen if I took that into my life daily? You know, what would that mean if I did that? How? So it's just something to inspire you, right? It's like, imagine if it wasn't the first ever Stoicon was on Marcus Aurelius's birthday, right? Imagine if we had one day of the year, we made Marcus Aurelius's birthday a public holiday and a big festive celebration, and there was all this lead up for 1 month where everywhere you went, you were being reminded of Marcus Aurelius. And, you know, every time you see him standing on his horse with his, straight erect spine and, that inspiring image of Marcus Aurelius. And and you go, wow, that's the spirit of Marcus Aurelius's birthday, is to be awesome like he was, right?
Yeah.
And then you spend 1 month of your year thinking about him, reflecting on him, calling your mates up and saying, what are you doing for Marcus Day? Oh, we're going to be reading book 8. What are you doing? Oh, we're going to be reading book 9. And then you getting into an argument about, but we read book 8 last year, why can't we read book 9 this year? Right? You're like, it's just ridiculous. Yeah, right. So why is Christmas any different?
Yeah.
Let's examine
it's a low order priority, when there's something much bigger to be focusing on. Yeah. And this is something that I've seen as well, because, these traditions, they do fall away. And I think that they start to fall away as soon as we lose sight of what is the ultimate, most important aspect of this thing. Something I've even thought about is, I've gotten into this habit, and sometimes it happens in my family as well, where you kind of like, oh, Christmas is coming up. What do you want for Christmas? Like, I want to get you something that you need, or I want to get you something that, you haven't got that you're looking for. Or that is out of the spirit of gift giving. It's like, no. Think about me as a person. Think about who I am, and think about what you believe I might really like as a little gift. And it doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be small. Just think about this person and what they might like for Christmas, so that you can surprise them with something that shows that you went away and did some soul searching and said, I really want to please this person with a gift this Christmas. Like, that's the spirit of Christmas. Not like, hey, what do you need? I'll just get you something. It's like, no. Think about
this. Is why I love Saturnalia. I think we need to bring back Saturnalia.
Yeah, okay, go on.
Right? Like,
your video's gone away. Okay, cool.
Saturnalia had, many of the things we recognize, as Christmas started in Saturnalia. One of those was gift giving, but usually the gift were candles, homemade candles. And the idea was that they would light the candles around the home, and that was to signify that the darkness of winter has passed, and now it's coming into a season of renewal, right? And so the light is there to represent that and to remind us of that. And I think that's really cool. There's that gift is something to inspire you. You're lighting up your world by having these candles everywhere.
Well, it's just really interesting to see, like, because I don't know much about Saturnalia, if anything. Okay, let me rephrase. I know nothing about Saturnalia.
All right, I'll tell you one thing. It's awesome.
Okay, I should look up more. But the interesting thing about what you just said is, it almost, like, it seems to me like that's also the exact message of Christmas in the Christ sense as well. Because Christ represented, in the biblical narrative, Christ represents this person who comes along at a point of darkness and, reignites the world with hope and love and joy, and it is about that, it's about that, you know, wandering through a desert, you know, and then now we're in a garden, you know. It's about that renewal, you know. And that's, it's just interesting how those you know, I need to look more into this. And yeah, just the similarities, the differences between Christmas and Saturnalia. But yeah, it must be.
And I think ultimately it makes it more meaningful, right? Like, you know, a lot of people would perceive, from a Christian point of view, you might perceive that as threatening, and you know, and hence people would kind of deny it. But I think when you discover the roots of something and understand it, it just seems like it has so much more significance, right? Like, it's not just an arbitrary thing that somebody made up. It evolved in such a way, and there's a reason behind that.
Yeah, totally, man. Well, yeah, I think this is a great place to end this conversation. This has been fascinating. I know we thought we were going to go for like half an hour. It's almost an hour and a half, but you know, I think that there's so many interesting ideas in here that you've presented, and you know, it is a beautiful time of year, and we have the opportunity to make it. We have the opportunity to bring a little bit more light into our lives at this time of year, and into the lives of those around us.
Which is ironic, because this room's actually quite dark now.
Yeah. So we're going to finish up.
Clouds come over.
Are we going to sing everybody a Christmas carol before we go? Or
yeah.
Next time. Next
Christmas. How's a Stoic do that? But before we go, just
I think a Stoic just
before,
sings.
You know,
I think.
Yeah.
I think
well, actually, in the Saturnalia they used to sing, but it was less carols and more like drunkenness, you know.
And I imagine that's what many people will be doing on Christmas anyway.
Right. Yeah.
The spirit lives on of Saturnalia.
Yeah. Except in, you know, here in Australia it'll be like, you know, the Aussie barbecue, and they'll be singing Cold Chisel and AC/DC or something.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, look,
so
to everybody,
Simon,
sorry, go on. Yeah.
We're not experts, and you know, the point of this has all been anyway to start a conversation, and just to get you thinking about how you're going to approach these things in a bit more of a conscious way. So yeah, that's the sort of point to end on there, I think, is to just remind you of that, and that, you know, you can use the Facebook page or the comment section or the forum in the walled garden to just drop any thoughts you've got and try and start that conversation, or ring up one of your mates and see what they think and ask them, how are you going with your family? Like, are you know, is everything okay with you? And you know, bring a bit more consciousness into this. It's something that we will have to spend our whole lives improving, is, you know, in these like interpersonal and relational skills. It's relationships are probably the most difficult thing in life to truly master, and we've all got a lot of work to do, you know. So, but like, buckle yourself in. Let's live in a Stoic cosmos where the whole humanity is united under the service of the common good for each other, as to follow our place in nature and the logos. And we're not on track for that goal at this current moment. So let's show some leadership towards that, and that means a lot of work in, you know, starting with yourself, and then, you know, as per oikoiosis, then to your family, to your friends. How can you be a leader, and how can you bring people together in your family and in your community? You know, what would it take for you to be able to bring your people in your country together? And then, you know, no one person is going to do this, but what can we do to start bringing the world together? And it starts at the local level.
Yeah.
So, you know, think of if you have any difficulties with your family, just remember Epictetus and what he says, that Zeus has matched you with a worthy training opponent.
Yeah.
And let's do it. Let's get excited, right? Let's get ready to take this on.
Yeah.
Why not?
100%, man.
Yeah.
I think you're right. And I think that's such an interesting idea. Look at this as an opponent that you're facing, or look at it as a challenge that you're facing, and step up, take leadership, you know, and be the person who you believe everybody else should be. You know, like start with yourself. So, hey everybody, Merry Christmas, happy holidays.
Love to you all.
Yeah, whatever it is for you at this time of year. Yeah, much love to all of you, and thank you for listening. And we might air an episode next week before the start of 2022. But nonetheless, I just want to say thank you for listening along this year. Thank you for following along what we've been doing. It's been such a great year. And I think that moving into 2022 with what we're doing in the walled garden, and we've got many exciting updates coming up with that, I think that 2022 is going to be even better than this year. I don't think that, I know that with, you know, with what's happening there, it's exciting times. So watch this space, you know, stay in touch, email us, you know, comment, whatever it is that you want to do to, you know, join in the conversation, and we'll see you very soon.